Hello, welcome to Inspect, a show about design and development. So, today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to get into development. So, if you're thinking about maybe a career change or a little side hobby, but we're going to try and focus on how you can get into this for pretty much free or as little cost as possible. So, we're going to be covering some of the hardware, some of the software, some of the tools, and some of the services that you might require. And there's plenty of paid options out there, but there's also plenty of free options to get you started. So, getting into web development, pretty much a low barrier to entry, really. Anyone can really do it. It doesn't really take much. So, yeah, let's kick it off.
Yeah,
First thing, of course, you're going to need some sort of computer to write your code on. Now, I mean, your computer doesn't need to be anything new or expensive. It can be pretty much anything. Chances are you've already got one. Whether you're on Windows, whether you're on Mac, it doesn't really make a difference to anything while you're getting started, because all you need is a place where you can write some text.
yeah.
So I don't know. Do you think that there's a minimum spec that you might need for a computer these days?
I don't think so. I think everything that's out there is fairly usable. Even your low spec machines, like you said, you just need a text editor to write some code, and that's it really. You don't need anything like amazing like an i7 or i9 supercomputer or a gaming machine to do this kind of stuff. It is really simple stuff. So basic laptop, probably cost minimum. You get a cheap laptop, 100 quid, 150 quid, if that. If you get a second hand one, maybe even cheaper, if you want to go really budget. Yeah, there literally is no kind of like specification for these machines to write code. It can be bog standard.
Yeah, the only thing that may be worth considering is that if your computer is still on an old operating system, like maybe an old version, a very old version of Windows, for example, you may not have the ability to upgrade to the latest web browsers. So, but I think anything that's purchased or any computer that was built or purchased in the last 5 to 8 years should be more than sufficient. Anything older than that, you may need to upgrade it a little bit, but it's not a complete barrier to entry, so you can still get started as long as you've got access to something.
Yeah, I booted up my old i5 computer. I've had that for about 6, 7 years now, and I just gave it a bit of a clean up, upgraded to Windows 10 on there because I'm selling the thing. And on eBay, the recommended value for that machine is about 100 quid, and some of them are going for about 70 quid as well. So, and it's really bog standard. But like you said, the Windows 10 had to be installed on there, and then I think they phased out some of the older browsers as well. I think up to i10 or something. I can't remember now. It's all Edge now, so that's a big upgrade that's taken place on the Windows machines now.
Yeah, exactly. And
Keep
then
that in mind.
if you've got a Mac, as long as you're running probably the last 5 or 6 versions of Mac OS, you should have the latest version of all the browsers. I don't know how far the support for the latest Safari goes, but I'm sure I'm sure it goes back at least for 5 or 6 versions of the operating system. So that shouldn't be a
Yeah,
problem.
easily.
If you've got a computer, you're ready to go.
Yeah.
Next thing you need is a bit of software. You're obviously going to need a web browser because you are building websites, so you need to test them. All the web browsers pretty much are all free. There are a few paid ones, but obviously you don't need to worry about those. You need to make sure that you've got a copy of Internet Explorer if you're on Windows, a copy of Safari if you're on a Mac, and you need a copy of Chrome and Firefox, no matter which platform you're on. At the bare minimum, really. There are a few other browsers which have small user bases, but I wouldn't worry about those too much to get started. Get yourself a copy of Chrome or Firefox, and you're good to go, really.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, and then to write your code, you're going to need some sort of text editor. So this is not a word processor. It's not Microsoft Word. It's not
Yeah.
Pages, Apple Pages. It's an application which lets you write just plain text. On a Windows machine, it comes preloaded as Notepad, and on a Mac, you've got TextEdit, which are the default applications. Obviously, they're both free. But if you wanted to, if you want to take it seriously, you got to get yourself a proper code editor. And again, most of those are for free as well. The one that we both use is Visual Studio Code, or VS Code as everyone refers to it, which is obviously brilliant. We did an episode a few months ago about some of the extensions that we like about VS Code, so it's worth listening to that one as well, because you can install loads of extensions to customize your code editor. But for beginners, you don't really need to customize it. Just use it out of the box. It's just a place for you to write some code.
Yeah, definitely. I think VS Code's the one out there that really does stand out for anyone who wants to get into coding. I mean, it's all good getting Notepad or TextEdit or any other plain text editor. That's fine. That's the way I learned, to be honest, to do handwritten code. Just seeing it all, in black and white, getting used to writing the code, especially if you've not written code before. It might be good to just do it in a text editor first, a really basic text editor, and then move across to VS Code or one of these, specified kind of text editors that we're using. It just makes everything a lot easier to understand. And there's a lot more surrounding these text editors these days, as we talked about in our previous episode.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You recommend anything else apart from VS Code that you've used?
Yeah. I've used quite a few, but I just can't get away from VS Code. It's probably the best one out there. Everything else that I've used is kind of just disappeared.
Yeah.
No one really talks about that kind of stuff.
I mean, Sublime is pretty good.
That was the one, yeah. Sublime.
It was pretty much the go-to editor before VS Code came and took the top spot. So Sublime is pretty good. There's another one called Atom.
Yeah, that was another one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not too bad. Again, I think it's fallen way, to the side a little bit now.
Yeah.
And there's one by GitHub called Brackets, which I do use it.
I use Brackets when I started looking for a good text editor. And before VS Code was out there, I was using Sublime, and then I had to go at Brackets, and I just could not get my head around it. It's got some weird kind of workflow I didn't quite understand, so I just dropped it.
Yeah. So stick with VS Code. It's free, and it's pretty much the best one out there. So
yeah,
why go for anything else? Just thinking about other software that you're going to need. At some point, you'll probably need a terminal window or a command prompt.
Yeah,
which is already included on your computer. Yeah. Like I said, you're going to need various browsers which are free. You may need an FTP client, which would allow you to actually upload your website to a hosting platform. There's not a massive need for those these days, but if you do need one, then FileZilla is probably the best free version that you can get.
Yeah.
FileZilla is cross-platform. It's on the Macs, on the Windows.
It's available everywhere.
It's probably available on Linux as well, I guess.
Yeah, it allows you to do FTP as well, because you've got quite a lot of hosts now. We'll get into that in a minute, which only allow SFTP instead of just standard FTP connection. So FileZilla is probably the best one. I wouldn't say they're essential for getting your websites live. I don't think it's essential. I mean, you can always use Terminal to do things like that as well.
Yeah, it just depends on where you are in your development and the style of website that you're building. If you're hosting your website with GitHub, and depending on where you're actually where it's going to end up in the end, you may not need FileZilla at all. So
yeah,
but it's there as an option, and again, it's free. What about design tools? Just on a side note, because if you are getting into web development, you may need to do a little bit of design work.
Yeah, they are handy, aren't they? You're going to have to picture what you're building first. So any kind of decent design tools out there, a lot of them are paid. That's the thing. So I don't know if any really good free options that are available out there.
Well, Figma is free, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got Figma.
So the main ones that most people will reach for are going to be Sketch and Photoshop. Sketch is going to set you back around about $100 for the year. And Photoshop, I wonder what there is.
I think Adobe XD is free as well.
Adobe XD is also free. Yeah, you just need a
Yeah.
Adobe ID, which is again
Yeah.
free. Um,
Yeah.
Photoshop, if you do want to do your designs in Photoshop, is around about $20 a month if you buy
Mm.
just the single app.
Yeah.
So again, that is a cost. $20 a month is still $240 a year. So it may not be something that you want to do straight away. But like I mentioned, the free alternatives are Figma, and then you've got Adobe XD. They're both good for UI design. If you need
Mm.
to manipulate any sort of images or any raster graphics, then there are a few other tools out there, but you probably don't need those straight away. You've got GIMP, which is a photo
Mm.
editor, and I've got another one here.
I think you could get away with some of those free SAS wireframe websites, which allow you to do really basic kind of layouts and designs for your pages.
Yeah,
and
that's an
interfaces.
option. Yeah,
So that could potentially work.
That's
But yeah, I mean, you can't get really, really intricate with the design or anything like that.
yeah, that's not a bad option.
Or you do what my friend Jay does. He designs in the browser.
Well, yeah, that's the end goal. Really, is for
Yeah.
you to be able to get to a stage where you can um, just lay out the site directly in code. But yeah, anyway, like I said, it's not essential to have a design tool if you're learning web development. It's just a nice to have. So
Yeah.
for these days, it's probably just best to get an account on Figma, which will allow you to do the most basic things at least. And then later on, if you feel that you need to, then you could always pay for a license on one of the other tools.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it for software, really. It doesn't take much at all. A text editor, a web browser, and maybe a terminal, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you actually want to be a web developer, obviously you're going to need to learn some skills. So there's loads of free resources out there to actually learn how to code. The biggest one is probably YouTube, because every topic under the sun is covered by someone or the other. And you probably want to search for something like basics of HTML, basics of CSS, basics of JavaScript, how to build your first website. Search terms along those lines will probably get you in a good place. And then moving on from there, then you can actually follow some actual courses, like structured courses online as well. So you got any good free resources where you can learn?
Yeah, we got. I think Free Code Camp is the one that I've been using quite a lot, especially for JavaScript. It's HTML and things like that I kind of picked up years ago. But it's a really good resource. It's a really good place to sit down and actually carry out tasks and mini sort of like projects and tests. So definitely look at Free Code Camp. I think the other ones I've got there is I've got HackerNoon, which is more of I guess it's like an article based or blog based or website with loads of resources. Can really help you to get involved and teach you quite a lot as well in terms of HTML, the basics. They cover all the basics as well. And Codecademy is another one that I just came across recently. I think it's paid. I think they've got a free trial, and then it's about £20 a month. But again, it's all structured. It's like attending university or a college, and all your courses broken down into smaller sort of chunks. It looks pretty good. I might give it a go actually, but it's one that stood out for the paid ones. So yeah, those are my three.
Yeah, there's also Code School, which has got a free tier as well, and in the free tier they do cover a lot of the basics, so it's definitely a good place to start. If you do want to pay, Udemy has some really good courses, and they're generally quite cheap, and they've always got some sort of sale on, especially around like holiday seasons or summer and stuff like that. They'll have a sale where they'll drop all their courses down to like $19 or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's plenty of paid resources, but there's also loads of free ones. Even just following people on Twitter, Medium articles. The amount of people who are willing to just share their knowledge these days is just crazy. So there's definitely no shortage of places to find information. Listen to podcasts. Obviously, you're already doing that, but there's plenty of other good podcasts out there where you can learn about web development. They don't necessarily teach you how to code, but you'll learn more about the industry and the business and techniques. Yeah, so you could listen to our inspiration episode, which was back in August, episode 21, and there we talk about some of the different blogs and different websites and podcasts and people that we follow and that have inspired our careers. So yeah, you could definitely check out their work, and hopefully they'll inspire you as well. So yeah, once you've got all this free knowledge from the internet, you can start putting together your first website. And then once you're built, what do you want to do? You want to share your website with the world, right? So now it's time to get that website hosted somewhere and out in the public. Now, I was doing a bit of research before we started recording, and I was just looking for some free places where you can get a domain name, so your own actual website URL. And I couldn't find any where you can get one that's completely free without some sort of caveat. Normally, if you sign up for their hosting package, like for a year, then you can get a free domain. So there's quite a few services that let you do that. You can do that with Squarespace, where you can sign up for a year, you get a free domain. Wix.com do that. Most of the big hosting companies will give you a free domain for a year sign up. Normally for the first year anyway, and then after the first year, you'll have to renew it.
Yeah, one thing that just came to mind actually is some of these hosting companies that you go to, or one that I use, is called TSO Host, and they've got like a plan that's, I think it's about £4, £5 a month. Really, really basic hosting sort of setup. And what you can do when you're in the control panel is you don't need a domain name to get your website up and running. So they kind of give you these placeholder domains, if you like.
Yep.
And you can just run your site off that, and you can create many instances of that as well. So that could be a good place to actually start. And it's only about £4 or £5 a month to get started. So that could be something that people could use.
Yeah, and even if you don't want to pay that, you can actually go to Netlify. And they do the same thing, but it's also for free. So you can get your code onto Netlify. They'll host it for free. It's good for sort of smaller basic sites, but you can host like a personal blog on there for free as well if you want, depending on how it's been built. And what they will do is they will build a site for you, and they will put it onto a temporary domain, a temporary URL, which will be something like a random number.netlify.com or something like that. And that URL is public facing. So if you're happy with it, you could just stick with that, and you can use that for as long as you need to until you're happy with your project. And then when you want to assign it to an actual domain name that you own, then you could just port it over, and it's all pretty easy. But if you were to just sort of buy a domain, you could buy those from places like in the UK, we have a site called 123reg, which is one of the biggest ones where you can buy it from. Or there's Heart Internet. Internationally, you've got things like GoDaddy, and you've got hover.com. There's another one called like Get My Name or something like that. But yes, if you just search for like the domain name registrar in your country, there'll be one that covers your area.
There's literally hundreds of these things out there, isn't there? So
yeah, exactly. And prices range from around 99p or 99 cents up to, they could go into thousands depending on what you want. But for an average .com, for something that is available, you're probably looking at about £20 a year.
Yeah.
And it's normally billed yearly. So again, it's fairly low cost. It's just not completely free.
Yeah, I think that side of this whole learning and building websites and stuff is all good. I think once you're kind of building websites for the world to see, then yeah, definitely you're going to need a hosting environment like that. I just had a thought. I use Local by Flywheel to build local websites. So when you're just learning and just starting out, that could be a really cool way to actually get started. There's loads of other tools out there like MAMP and LAMP and WAMP and all these other setups that you can get to help you host a website on your local machine. But local's really good, especially if you're using WordPress. It kind of just builds everything for you at the click of a button, and you're ready to go. But I guess because it's WordPress, it's a little bit more advanced, but probably something that people might want to look into, because I think you can just host your regular sort of static websites with that as well, with ease. So that might be another resource that you might want to look at.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Actually, you mentioned about local hosting, local development environment. We probably could have covered some of that in software, but to start with, you shouldn't need it because you're going to be just writing HTML and CSS. It's going to be static files. But as you get more and more advanced, you're going to be wanting to write some sort of dynamic websites, and you're going to need to be doing that locally on your own laptop before you push it to the world, which is what we mean by local development. But that's something that you can learn later. Again, it is totally free. You can use, like you said, a service like MAMP, which is a PHP Apache-based local server, and there's a free version. Or you can just use a terminal and use something like Node.js for a local server. Again, completely free. But we won't get into that now. It's just something worth considering later on. Yeah. Okay, so now you've got your site built, you've got your site hosted, either on a free domain or on your own personal domain. Next thing, you need to let people know about it. So you need to do some basic marketing at least. And what's the best way of getting the word out there these days?
Social media.
Social. That's it. Go. So yeah, just you don't need. It doesn't need to cost anything. It's all you need is a social media account. And you can join communities of like-minded people, depending on what your project is that you want to promote. Or you can just push it to your own personal network. But you might want to, at some point, do some email marketing, where you might have a form on your website where you're capturing email addresses, send out a newsletter. And even with email marketing, you can get started for free. I think if you go to MailChimp, they've got a free tier. MailChimp is probably the easiest one to get started with. They've got a really nice interface, and it's quite, not to be cross, but it's quite idiot proof. But yeah, you can, with MailChimp, you can send out to 2,000 people for free. So that's more than enough to get your business started if you're trying to turn this into a business. So your marketing is free as well. So yeah, basically, it doesn't really take much to get into web development. All it takes really is once you've got your computer and a couple of cheapish resources, the biggest cost is going to be time, really. And as long as you've got plenty of that, you should be fine.
Yeah, definitely. I think the key thing here is going to be the learning aspect of it. People want to get their head down and really focus on writing code, especially if you've never done it before. The resources that are out there are just ridiculous. And back in the day when we were doing this kind of stuff, we never had this luxury, of picking up all this knowledge that's readily available out there.
Yeah.
So
it's just YouTube. I wish YouTube was around when I first started studying. I pretty much do all of my learning on YouTube now. Everything comes from there. Okay, cool. Just another thing, I came across this website today. It came up on my RSS feed. It was a link shared by hongkiat.com, which is a design technology blog. I don't know how it's pronounced, but it's spelled HONG and then KIAT.com. Anyway, every week they push out an article like fresh resources for web designers and developers. I think it's monthly, actually. And one of the links they shared was a website called Free4Dev. So it's the URL is free-for.dev. Bit of a weird one. But someone's just basically put together this repository of links on different like development related services and providers and stuff like that, which are free. So it came at a good time, really, because that literally came on my RSS feed this morning. And on there, it's got stuff like CDNs and design and UI resources, DNS stuff, emails, code editors, and then like tools for team collaboration. It's got all sorts of stuff, web hosting. So it's worth looking through that list as well. You'll probably find some other free resources. It's quite a long list, and it's definitely not like a beginner's list. It's more useful for someone who's been in the industry for a little while and is looking to do maybe a bit more complex development. But yeah, still worth checking out.
Sounds good. I'll have a look at that as well.
Yeah. That's pretty much it. Quite a short episode. It's quite easy to get into web development for free. There's nothing really stopping you from giving it a go. It's like, why not?
Yeah. And just a heads up, try and bypass all the Hello World stuff as well, especially if you're doing you're learning online with CodeCamp or these or similar kind of online learning websites, and really just get yourself involved in writing some really functional code. Obviously, they always start with a hello world. It's just a cliche, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you're completely new to the language, then it's good to just know those basics on how to get some text onto the screen or how to add some numbers together and so on.
Yeah,
but like you said, it's worth having a real world project in mind if you've got one. And it doesn't have to be too complicated. You could just think of a site that you already use and just try and maybe recreate a part of it. You don't even have to redo the whole thing. So
that's a good idea, actually.
Yeah, just a little part of it. A blog is always a good way to start for learning development because what you're doing, you're creating a list of items, and then you're going into an item, and then you're displaying various details about that blog post. An image, a title, a date. So you're working with different data types. You're working with different pages and page templates and things like that. So and it's very text based as well, so it doesn't really require any design skills. It's more about structure. So blog is quite a good place to start. Right, okay. That was nice and easy. Maybe we'll do something similar for how to get into design as well, because a lot of it is the same, but there are a few obviously tool changes and learning resources that are going to be different. And there's generally a little bit more cost involved when you're getting into design. We can have a think about that one and maybe do that one come in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, that'd be good.
All right, good stuff. Before we go, got any recommendations for this week?
I do. 1 second. So I picked up a book that I was reading on holiday, and it's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a and it's a counterintuitive approach to living a good life by Mark Manson. I've seen people sharing like photos of the cover on Instagram and Twitter and things like that. So I thought, let me just pick it up and see what it's about. And I started reading on the plane, and before I knew it, I was 50 pages in.
Yeah.
So it is pretty good. Definitely worth picking up.
Yeah, do you know what? I was actually quite close to buying it myself. I was I went to Austria last week, and again, I was at the airport and I saw it there. And I remember my brother's got the book, and he had tweeted, I think he had put a picture of it on Instagram or something.
Yeah.
And I was close to getting it, but I had a short flight, so I thought, it's all right, I'm not going to read it on the plane now. But
you won't get off the plane, trust me. You'll just be stuck. You'll be in the book. It is really good.
Okay. So sorry, what's it called again, and who's it by?
The Subtle Art of Not Giving a by Mark Manson.
Mark Manson. Okay. That'll be in the show notes. This week, I'm probably just going to recommend a game, actually. I've been playing the new Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening on, well, it's not new, it's an old game, but the remake of it on Nintendo Switch. I just completed that today, actually.
Nice.
Completed the final level. But I've been playing it for a couple of weeks now, and I've never played the original before, the Game Boy version. So it was a completely new game to me, but because I played A Link to the Past on the on the Super Nintendo before. This game is very, very similar. So although it wasn't very difficult, it was good. It's a good fun game, especially after playing Breath of the Wild on the Switch, which was like ridiculously hard in comparison. This was like a nice, easy, low impact game. Don't have to worry about it too much. You know, you can spend 20 minutes on it, put it away, which is the sort of game I like, really. I don't like to take things too seriously with gaming.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good fun. The graphics are really nice. It's very sort of cute and cartoony aesthetic they're going for in this game. But yeah, it's just generally a good fun game. It's not difficult. And if you've ever played the Game Boy version, then you'll probably love this one.
Nice.
Yeah, it's good fun. Okay, cool. Well, hopefully this episode's shown you that, you know, the barrier to get into web development is pretty low. So there's nothing stopping you from doing it if that's something you're thinking about. So yeah, come and join myself and Kay and become web developers. And we'll go on this journey together. But until then, yeah, we'll catch you in the next episode, and we are signing off. So bye-bye.
Later.
Thank you for listening to the show. Be sure to subscribe in your podcast player and feel free to drop a rating or review in Apple Podcasts. You can follow the show on Twitter @InspectFM and find the show notes for today's episode and a full archive of all shows over at inspect.fm. Honkiat.
Yeah, I used to use that back in the day.
How the hell do you say that? Honkiat.
I don't know.
Honkiat. Okay.